Hello, everyone. Welcome to another event under the initiative GDG Tech Sessions. Here, Carlos Gabriel from GDG Madeira introducing this session for you. With these sessions, we intend to keep sharing knowledge about diverse tech topics and speakers from around the world and make it available independently of where you are. So, we are glad to have you here and we hope that you enjoy a lot what we've prepared for you. Just just very quickly, we are trying to introduce what is the main goals of GDG Tech Sessions. And as all we know, due to the constraints felt globally to the new pandemic, we are forced to change the way we share knowledge with our GDG community. Now, instead of having in-person events, we are trying to adapt to a new format of events, namely online events. However, this comes with a significant opportunity. At this moment, and with this initiative, we can share even more content for our entire GDG community, regardless of their city or country. Altogether, in a series of events previously scheduled for everyone. And yes, anyone can join us. So if you are interested in integrating our team, please visit our webpage, gtech-sessions.com, so you can know what you must do to join us. Today, GDG Tech Sessions initiative comes with a collaboration of GDG Barcelona, where we will be going to discuss web vitals, improving experience and performance on the web with the technology enthusiast Romulo Cintra. If your community wants to propose a tech session, just fill this form. The link it's in the description of the YouTube video, and then we will contact you to further details. Don't forget that you can always propose an event with more than one GDG, and isn't mandatory that the speaker belongs to the GDG. It can be from your community or a friend of yours with contents and skills to share. These tech sessions can also be proposed for any GDG, women tech makers, and GSC that have some content to share to the community. For the questions and answers, we will use the Slido platform in order to facilitate your communication with the speaker. Just post your question and then we will reply at the end of the talk. Like before, the link is in the description with the video. Now with you, Juan Fuentes from GDG Barcelona. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you for inviting us to share our experience or explain a bit what is GDG Barcelona. I need to say that we are more than GDG Barcelona. We are GDG Barcelona, GDG and Women Tech Makers Barcelona because we decided to join forces with the Women Tech Makers group from here. And I need to explain that, well, we born in 2010 as Barcelona Androides initially, and then we moved to GTAC the same year, and then we finished it in the GTG program. Well, we have a really big or small, depending of with which city you compare, of 1.7 million of people, but the metropolitan area is 3.7, and the province is 5.6. So we have a lot of people potentially interested coming to events, and that's great because well, we now in Mita we are over 2,214 members, and in the last 2 years we did more than 50 events. But from the beginning, maybe we have over 120, I think that more events. And what kind of events we do? Well, we are doing every kind of event. We did several study jams. Even we did some sessions on weekends. So in order to let people to come, that during the week it's really complicated for people that is working or studying. And even we were helping with the student developer clubs that were doing study jams at the university. and we were doing some sessions there too. We have done workshops from several topics, from Android TV, Flutter, Android Wear. We did a lot of the fest. For that, we joined forces with other regional GDGs. The biggest one that we did had more than over 1,000 registered users. At the end, there was over 550 assistants. That it was really good. We every year do an event coinciding with the International Women's Day, and that the Women Tech Makers part of the group is in charge of that, but we are helping. We do regular talks in a lot of different places, from startups to universities, even suburban universities out of the city. In fact, we did several the fest there. And we were lucky, and we had some Googlers that came to do some talks. The last one was just before the lockdown here in Barcelona, and was Will Large, that is Flutter engineering lead for material design. It was really, really good. And well, as I said, we are not only doing events or small talks, small events. We at the same time we do talks in big events like On Motion, or in the Mobile World Congress. We did some talk inside the WIP. We are the subject of our events are not fixed. We gave talks in the past about Android, web, assistant, Flutter, a lot of different topics. We are not closed to any topic or any technology. Even we did events related to Windows Phone development with Nokia and Microsoft. So it is really good. And well, currently we are there in GDG Barcelona and want to make us, as I said, but we are always waiting for more people. As you know, how many, as much as we can be, we are happier with that. So our doors are always open to receive new organizers. And at the same time, if anyone want to give some talk in our GDG, or use our GDG to share some experience, we can help with that. We can help if it's someone new and wants to learn more about do talks, or we can coach speakers. Just some information in case someone wants to contact with us related to that. Contact with, for example, our Twitter, GDG Barcelona, or we have an Slack, or Women Tech Makers Barcelona too. But now the really important part here of this presentation is because we want to know more about how we can improve the experience and performance on web, and Romulo is perfect for that. So please, Romulo, enlighten us with this talk.
Hi, Joan. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for organizing this kind of events, because I know during this pandemic and also in regular times, having these technology events, it's very healthy for all the community and for all developers that are learning or want to share some knowledge. This evening, we're going to talk about Web Vitals, and not just Web Vitals. We will talk about how we can improve the user experience on the web, and consequently work on performance of our web presence. Before we start, I will just introduce myself. I'm Romulo Cintra. I live here in Barcelona. I work on financial industry, EVA. Also part of body of standards, contributing with ECMA 402 on behind on TC39. Also chairing a working group of message format, and I'm open source enthusiast. On my spare time, I try to give some talks or teaching on the school, and try to spread the word about new technologies and how we can improve the web presence with them. I just put my YouTube account, a newly created YouTube account, because I will start something new. Please just follow. And if you want me follow on Twitter, you also have my Twitter handle that will be along all the talk. Again, before we start, all the questions, extra questions beside of the Slido, everything you want to share, if you want to say, oh, great talk or shit talk, sorry, the word, you can use this vitals for web hashtag, because this talk is not just about improving the web. It's about spread the word and how experience is important for the end users, and how as developers and everybody involved on the creation process of web content should be aware of this. Please, will be also along all the slides, the vitals for web hashtag. Let's get started. Well, what are web vitals? This is the main question because we are here. We have two different definitions, the short one and the long one. But during the presentation, we will have a best picture about how the overall web vitals are, meaning that we're going to start with the shortest one. Well, the short definition is that web vitals are a grouped set of metrics that can give us a quality guidance to improve our experience. That way we can do great, awesome user experience on the web. These are unified signals that we developers already know, because we are already using some tools to get these numbers. But now Google put it all together and gave us some references. In that references, we're going to use to improve our websites and our experience. But before we start directly with Web Vitals and core Web Vitals, we need to understand something, the tooling around the Web Vitals, because without metrics, without numbers, without all this data collection that tools can provide, Web Vitals doesn't make sense at all. Meaning that we're going to go through all the 6 tools that us as a developer and also Google uses to generate these Web Vitals and core Web Vitals metrics and guidance. First of all, let's start with a bit of history. We're going to see all these 6 tools. The first one is DevTools. It's the most known tool that we all use it as a developer. And here you see like a lab icon on top of the Chrome DevTools. It's because it's a lab tool. A lab tool is normally a tool. I will explain a little bit later, but just to be aware, it's a tool that you can use locally, but normally you cannot test with the real user. It doesn't have any interference with the real user. Just giving a little bit of history. You know that for the younger ones, you know that in 2006, before that, we had Firebug, and wasn't even included on the browser itself. We need to install it as an extension. Chrome DevTools together with WebKit Web Inspector were the first one developer tools included on the navigator itself, on the browser itself. Before that, we need to sprinkle alerts all around our code to see how it goes. Chrome DevTools allow us to prototype, debug, to measure, to benchmark, to emulate, to develop also in the navigator itself, in the browser itself. It's a great tool, one of the best. As a developer, we cannot live without it. After that, we have, I will talk from these two together, we have the page speed insights and also Search Console. Page speed insights from the page speed family that was announced in 2010, and also released as a page speed insights in 2013, is a tool that it's responsible mainly to generate reports and to generate lab data and field data. With page speed insights, you can check every website all around the world and your site as well. And you have a cool thing here. You have lab data because they run Lighthouse, that I will explain also in a while, but probably as a developer, we are already tried Lighthouse. They run Lighthouse from the Google servers. They get that data and they save that data. And also they have all the data from the field metrics. Yeah, field metrics are the data collected from real users, real metrics, meaning that with page speed insights, you can use to measure your site, measure against real data, against the percentile that real user has, meaning that you have more accurate ratio and more accurate metrics than you probably will have on local. Locally is a great reference to use Lighthouse, but here you should time to time check how your website goes. And of course, you have lab data and you have field data together. We have now the Search Console, the second tool I want to bring from these two. And for all the oldie ones like me, in 2015, I think, we knew it as a Webmaster Tools. Now they rename it as a Search Console, and it's differently from PageSpeed Insight. This tool it's most for who wants to understand how their presence is going on the web. You can check if your traffic is going well, troubleshooting why the crawlers are not going to your website, all these kind of things to measure and to carefully monitor how your things are going at level of presence and reaching people. Okay, in 2016 we had the V1 of Lighthouse. They have some previous version before, but this was the game changer for every developer. Now they are used to have a Lighthouse and a Lighthouse as reference for their developments. Well, now we have Lighthouse directly on Chrome itself. You can just open the audit tabs and you run a report. Lighthouse is an amazing tool because can in seconds provide you the guidance and metrics for performance, accessibility, SEO, best practice, and also all the PWA features. I see this tool in two different dimensions. One, it's the technical one, and another is the educational one. The technical one, as I mentioned, we can have right metrics from the performance of your code, performance of your page, how things are going, what you are doing well or not so well. And the cool thing that you can run in three different dimensions as well. You can run from the command line on your continuous integration or in any node server, etc. Or you can run from UI, as we can see on PageSpeed Insights, or from any command line. This is so cool because it's a tool that can be integrated in different places and measure the same data. And the another cool thing, the other dimension also I want to talk, is the educational dimension, because it's an educative tool. When we started developing, or at least myself, when I start developing, we had books, we have some internet tutorials. Here with Lighthouse, that is a lab tool as well, because you can run locally. You have the performance hints, the best practice hints, meaning that when you do something not so good, he tells you you can improve something. In this example, you have images, and he just trying to tell you that you can use some modern formats to load your images, meaning that also the educational part is so important, because developers that are starting or even more seasoned developers can have these advices to tweak their websites and web applications, even with integrations with React and different frameworks. It's an awesome tool, and everybody should use it always as a development tool, and also as a gatekeeper for our production environments, like I will say in a while. Well, other tool that is also important. Sorry, I'm doing an overview about all the tool sets that compose the numbers and figures that are part of the Web Vitals, meaning that is important to have these tools in mind. Crux is a tool that's born in 2017, and is the Chrome User Experience Report. In simple words, for me, it's a huge database where all the data from usage of Chrome, usage of some pages that are gathered anonymously, are used to compose a huge spectrum of data. This data, I see it as a good source to see how trendy is a framework, how popular is a new API, if the adoption of, example, web components or React or Angular is, because here you have all the data that you can imagine from a huge amount of websites. You also can have yours, and it's free data. You can use it, available on PageSpeed Insights, as you see on PageLab data, or you can just query. I didn't mention before, but all my slides has an icon on top, and that icon goes to documentation. In this case, the documentation goes to the cookbook of the cracks, and there you can learn how efficiently query the BigQuery to get the data that you need. Also, in my opinion, just outside of the talk, I believe that it's a cool tool just as a business itself, because data, it's power, data is information, and data can do and produce lots of different things. Well, the final tool and that we're going to review, it's two tools in reality. We have the Web Vitals extension that you can today or now, while you are watching the talk, install in your browser, in your Chrome browser. And it's an amazing tool because measure in real time what is going on the page that you're navigating, and measure three different things: measuring the large contentful paint, the first input delay, and the cumulative layout shift. That are three metrics, three web core web vitals that we're going to talk soon. But this is a tool that you should have and should use. It's a lab tool as well, because you run it on your navigator in your browser, and immediately you can see, oh, this site, it's not running so well. And if you are like me, you directly open the DevTools and try to check what is going on. It's a very, 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 very cool tool, and also is always there. You have several options to have always an overlay if something goes wrong, etc., etc. I did some more review on this, and yeah, as you can see here, you have in this page, the large contentful paint is red, and the cumulative layout shift also it's not in a good number, meaning that will show the red dot on top. You just investigate and you are okay. Just to keep in mind that lab tools and mostly this Web Vitals extension depends in how your browser it's effective and powerful, meaning that low-end devices probably won't have the same metrics that you have, meaning that you can use it, and it's recommended to use to investigate, to develop, to just use as an informative tool, and also taking into consideration that the values can change depending on the device that final user has. The other cool part of the Web Vitals library is extension is they have a library itself. It's published on GitHub. You can also download code. But the cool part about this second half of the Web Vitals extension is you can install it on in your application. And to be honest, you can get the same data as a Google has, and even more Web Vitals using this library. You can integrate with Tag Manager, with Analytics, but also you can integrate with your own workflow. Imagine you can get all the Web Vitals for yourself, and with this data you can compare with Search Console, or you can just use it individually on your team, on your company, etc., etc. Well, the cool thing here, the cool thing about having extension, as you can see, sometimes you see red dots everywhere. Well, comparing both, the extension, as we mentioned, it's a lab tool. You can get metrics from your local, running locally, and is not a representation of how end user will experience your page. But other cool things are, behind things, they are using the code of library, meaning that is kind of dog fooding. It's a circle pipeline, yeah, because web extension use Web Vitals, page speed insights use Lighthouse behind the scenes. All the tools and are chained together here, and it's recommended for development. And the library, you can have field metrics because you can include it directly on your page, on your web application, and go to production with that. And you can have the core Web Vitals and also even more Web Vitals. Here I have a small mask there because we are doing some spoiler alert during all the talk. But yeah, we have core Web Vitals, but we have a huge set of vitals. Core Web Vitals are just 3. But this library can gather information from more Web Vitals, and we're gonna see it later. And the cool thing about using the library as well, it's you can do and build custom integrations to see how your website performance in real users. This is so important to keep our business, our web, and our experience always improved. Well. I said that I will explain the difference between lab tools and field tools. During this time, I think that it's quite clear what is the difference. Here with Chrome DevTools, Web Vitals extension, and Lighthouse, we have lab tools that we can execute locally, and we don't have the data from the final user because there isn't any final user interacting. With field tools, or field metrics, or we have real data. Page speed insights use real data from Crux, from Search Console. Search Console use also real metrics and real data. And Crux is the place where all this data is saved. It's real data as well. And the Web Vitals library that's also included on your web application. You can report for any Google service, Tag Manager, Analytics, and you can report for your Logstash or any other service that you have yourself. Well, Lighthouse and Chrome DevTools cannot test first input delay, okay, differently from the Web Vitals extension, but they can test total blocking time instead, okay? I will explain all these kinds of things, details later on, because we're gonna start in reality with the core Web Vitals, okay? If we were in a place that's in a regular place and not in online event, I will ask who wants more, yeah? And probably someone will say me. Well, now we're gonna start with what is the core Web Vitals itself. Core Web Vitals are Web Vitals, but are just a subset of Web Vitals that we can apply to all the pages. Imagine we have 6 Web Vitals, but the core ones are just picking few of them. Before we see and go through all the Web Vitals, I also want to clarify something from this initiative. Web Vitals is an initiative that tries to give you numbers, metrics for calculate your experience, but also give you the thresholds to understand how you are performing well or not. Because before, as a developer and as a community, we can have numbers. You can say, oh, your site is slow. Your site loads in 20 seconds. But 20 seconds could be a good number, depending of the situation, depending of the country, depending of the lots of factors. Here, they just, based on all the data they have, they calculate the numbers and where you should be to grant a good and a healthy experience on the web. We're going through these ones, probably you already know. The first contentful pane that measures the start of loading till when the first thing is rendered or painted on page. The large contentful pane is similar, but the opposite. It's when the last thing is painted or rendered on the page. First input delayed is when you just press that button and you go have a coffee and you come back and the pop-up didn't come yet. It means that it's the time between how things start and you have an action, or when you are ready to respond an action from the input of the user. Time to interactivity, it's similar, but is measured without having the input of the real user. That is based on the load of the scripts and all the events of readiness that are already applied. Time to interactive. Sorry. Total blocking time is the difference between the VCP, the first contentful pane, and time to interactive. And lately we have the cumulative layout shift. That it's also simple to explain because it's measures the time when your layout gets stable. Imagine you load the page, everything you are messing around, until get the stability and the render it's stable, you have this layout shift. And you can see also in Chrome DevTools and analyze it. Well, the core Web Vitals are a subset of the Web Vitals itself. Another important fact that you can see in subtitle is that Google picked these 3 ones and won't modify them till 2021, meaning that during this time you can improve your performance, improve your web page without worry that this metric will be calculated differently in the next release of Chrome or in the next release of DevTools, in the next release of web extension. No, these metrics will be kept as they are with the same numbers till next year. And probably, I don't know, it's my personal opinion, probably more of these Web Vitals can be included as well as a metrics, okay? Well, these 3 metrics that we saw previously are the LCP, the large contentful panes, that cares more about how things load, how fast is loading your page, and we have some thresholds, yeah? The green, the yellow, and the red. If you are on the green, that is below 2.5 seconds, you are good to go. If you are yellow, between 2.5 and 4 seconds, probably you should start worrying about, because it's very easy in the next commit of your web application going to red. It's likely going to red than going to green normally. But if you are after the 4 seconds, probably you should call the doctor, yeah? Well, interactivity. The first input delay belongs to the interactivity field, yeah? And you have different numbers as well. You have the green, the yellow, and if you are on below 100 milliseconds, you are okay to go. The others, you need to worry about that. Users probably take a coffee and come back, and your website is not interactive yet. Visual stability. I explained, the last one I explained it, and it's cumulative layout shift. Also, it's the time, it's calculated differently because the other ones are based on time. This one is based on calculation. It calculates I will explain the calculations. I'm saying always, I will explain it later, but yeah, I will really explain, but just giving an overview about that. The calculation is measuring your div, or your div or span or component size in the viewport and how much he moved around. And together you can have a number that is multiplied by the size or the distance he moved. We have the calculations after to get this number. And yeah, it's differently calculated. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of distance in the viewport and how it moves and get this metric. Let's start with the LCP, large contentful panes. We already said is about loading. Well, this can happen. Why can happen these kind of things? I have a Portuguese page that guys from Portugal, hi. Why can happen? Slow response times, render blocking issues on GS and CSS, slow resources equals slow times, client-side rendering. Here is a special case, and I want you to just be aware of that, because I use web page test, that it's an amazing tool as well, together with all of those, to run a test with the JN, Jornal de Notícias, a Portuguese newspaper, and took me 12 seconds to fully load the page from a US server. Okay, doesn't represent that probably here in Europe we are faster, because we are. But well, having these metrics, we are on the red part of the table. We take more than 4 seconds. We take 3 times more than 4 seconds. And it's not cool for final users to read the newspaper, because when you start reading, probably it's not already new. It's something already old. Well, now we're going to go through how to optimize our pages for LSP. For the server side, we have few simple things we can do. Serve minified payloads, CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. Transfer less data, because if you don't transfer data, you win, because it's nothing over the wire. Simplify your cache process and improve the data consumption. How you can do this? Minifying is simple. Just minify, the bytes over the network are less, and you instantly have more efficient network speed between the server and your client. The compression, it's mandatory using compression. Sometimes I see people not using compression. It's so important. It's something that is for free, because your browser already supports, your browser support or server support. Please use it. You have some popular ones, gzip and Brotli. Brotli, it's quite newer than gzip. They claim to be, at least they say they are around 20% better on performance than gzip, but with gzip you are already okay. Compression rate is between 60 and 80%, and you should use it because it's a huge saving, and it's a free saving that you have, because I bet that you already have it on your browser, and in your browser you already have it, you have it on your hosting service, and it's very easy to configure on Nginx or Apache. It's very easy to configure. And the last one is CDN. Remember the first slide I showed, the page loading, 12 seconds from a US server? Well, using a CDN where you can control and have edge servers and serve from nearby locations, you will have improved speeds. It's not the same serve this page from US to China than serve from Spain to Portugal. The distance counts, and it's a huge latency on network. Please try to use. I understand that sometimes your business model doesn't need this geographical coverage, let's say, because you are just your market is just Portugal or just Spain. You need to be fast for people in Portugal and Spain. But now with a so global world, we should start using these techniques, because we will gain in our business, in the readiness and in the performance for the final user. On the client side, also, we can do a lot of things. Here in the LSP, you can spend all the presentation talking about that. We're going to talk about how efficiently load assets, how don't block render process, how use only the JavaScript and CSS you need, and lately, preloading. Well, probably I could give you the popular hints, but I will give you the unpopular ones. This case, the Unicode range. Unicode range you can apply on when you are loading fonts, because fonts are one of the most problematic and bottlenecks for the web page, because are the heaviest thing that you usually load if you are not loading jQuery anymore. No, jokes aside. Well, using a Unicode range, you can have 4 different strategies. In your CSS, when you just add your font face, you can choose to have a single code point or a range of code points, or even a wildcard, or just declare them as you need. What are these code points, or what are these? Are the Unicode characters that you want to have from that font. Imagine if you are using Arial on your website, that it's supported from all the browsers on the market, but you need some special font for your logo or some icon. Don't load old font, you can just say this character that I need to load. This will tell your browser when load font, I don't need everything. Just bring me that piece of font that I will use on the page. This will shave a lot of bytes when loading the page. You should use immediately. If you are loading fonts from Google Fonts, you also can use this strategy, the subset strategy. Imagine you have to cover Latin characters and Cyrillic or Greek. Don't load everything. Don't load Arabic. Don't load. Just load all the characters you need to cover the language that your website support. Be careful with that, because sometimes when converting from a normal font to a font face font, you are converting characters that you don't need really, because you're using on English, Latin characters and not any other characters. Google Fonts also have a cool thing that you can just send the text that you want to cover with that font. That is also an amazing feature, because that way you can just put the text. Imagine your logo or your brand, you can just do it on a special font. And it's also an awesome case when you really need to have multiple fonts on your website with different texts. This is also a cool alternative. And are some unpopular ways of loading assets. Images. Okay, it's mandatory to say that we need to use modern formats to load images, but most of things Adios Mani already said on Twitter. Yeah, you have new attribute, loading attribute that you can apply on image tag, and you can lazy load the images, or you can eagerly loading. This will give different priorities for the images. And if you lazy load an image, imagine you have your screen. If the image is not on the screen, the image won't load. The image will only load when they are likely to render, when they are approximately 3000 pixels. And since Chrome 79, these thresholds was reduced to 1250 pixels, meaning that you need to be even more closer of the image to they start load. This is great, will save performance, because so far, if you don't use lazy load, you have 100 images on the same page, and all the images will load, and it's not good. It's not okay. Don't do it. Just follow these advices from Adios Mani, and you will be okay. You also can do some tricks, and you can preload images. You saw in the previous slide the image with source set. Here you can do the trick. How you can do it? You can use the link. As you can do a preload tag, you can do the same here. And you can use the image source set and image size. What happens? You can see on the image tag that you can initiate different images and the inner side of the images. You see my pic that has 480 pixels as an example. And in the link, I can use the same equivalence, because the source set is equivalent to image source set, and the size is equivalent to the image size, meaning that when browsers start loading, you can preload the responsive image at the same time you are loading the image. This is also something very cool. And imagine you need a hero image that weighs 700 kilobytes in Ultra HD or Retina. Sometimes in a device and a mobile device, you just need 1/4 of that resolution, meaning that you also can apply the media query syntax to have this working. This is so cool. You have all the links for how it works on the presentation at the end. If you want to ask more, please do it. And we have the coverage tab. I think that is not new. We already have it, I think, for 2-3 years since. I'm not sure. But we have the coverage tab that is also a representation of what you are using. I will say, I was about to say a bad word. Sorry. No, the coverage tab. It's one of the awesome features, because easily can show you what you are using and what you are not using for CSS and JavaScript. And happens that almost all the pages that I'm trying to investigate, they have a huge percentage of code they don't use. On JavaScript side, on the CSS side, sometimes it's because we load the entire bootstrap and we are only using the grid or the button. And of course, we need to load everything on, and we are not efficiently using the resources and efficiently working with JavaScript and CSS. For JavaScript, you have Rollup, Parcel, Webpack, all these tools that also can help you code splitting, dynamic importing the code, etc., etc. Use it heavily and use the code coverage panel to understand where your code or what parts of your code are really needed on the startup, on the first on the first pane of your page. And for CSS, you have some plugins that what can do this is check what is represented on your first page, what CSS is used above the folder. That means is the window that you see, and can just inline that CSS. You have critical CSS, writers. You have all these tools that can work also as a Webpack or Rollup extensions, and this will improve us also your presence on the web, because you are loading less bytes because you don't need them. Just load what you're really gonna use and what you really need. And in this coverage tab, you can analyze perfectly and accurately what are the thing. This one is probably a very popular one, but sometimes I mess around with them between the async and the defer. Well, now it's the time that you get this good for life. Happens that when you are loading a page, you are parsing the HTML, JavaScript starts loading, and if you are using async, what happens is when JavaScript is loaded, you start executing them, and the parsing of HTML stops for a while, runs the JavaScript, and again continue the parsing. And defer is parsing all the HTML, and at the end, a script is already loaded, we'll execute the script. You should be using this carefully, but you should use it to not block with unused scripts on the first paint, because sometimes, most of the times, you don't need really that JavaScript that you are loading to render the first page. And now I will try to group them in parts because they are quite long. We have DNS prefetch and preconnect that does similar job. What they do, the first one does a handshake on your IP address or your server and opens a kind of connection to warm up all the subsequent connections. The preconnect works the same, but do and establish a real connection, meaning that it's a little bit more resource, more heavy, let's say like that, and you cannot overuse it because probably you are not optimizing, you are doing the opposite. Prefetch and preload, they are likely similar, but the prefetch, what does is start loading the things with low priority in the background and preload with high priority. And at the end, we have a cool one that is pre-render. What does pre-render is, if you have a website that likely will navigate to about page or the login or sign-in page, you can start pre-rendering that page in the background. What this does is opens a page on an invisible tab, and when you navigate, this page is immediately available. There are also some tools that are doing this, like Guess.js, that put together some analytics and some AI to build this. But just check Guess.js also. It's a cool thing that does this automatically for you. Well, I'm not sure about my time, but I will continue. We have the caching and the adaptive loading. Here, It's just use service loader, service workers, just offline capabilities, save it, cache it, try to conditionally load based on network. You have here this post from Damian Renzulli and Jeff Spoznik that it's amazing because they describe how a huge newspaper also or online news in Brazil does. They have some code on the service worker that identifies the speed, the network speed you have, and just provide the correct data with more definition or lower definition, or you can use it based on screen size. You can just customize in your own. Okay, it's also a good thing. And good cache control policies. Use it well, because we will have lots of advantages when you are running your web. To finish the LCP part, I have some extra tips that are the popular ones. Don't serve legacy JavaScript. I mean, don't serve ES 2015 in Chrome 83 or 85 or in latest Chrome. Try to have differential load on module, no module strategy, or any other strategy that you can have. Load polyfills aside, not with your main bundle, etc., etc. Minify everything. Budget everything. You have Lighthouse that allow you to budget your code. Use linters. Yeah, use linters, because you can avoid lots of bad practices on your code as a team using linters. Use HTTP2 when available. Compress images using modern formats, and server-side render when you can. Sometimes most of the pages that we build and are on the internet are not so dynamic, meaning that you can do static websites or server-side render them. Interactive. First input delay. Let's see what is this and how we can also make to improve this. Well, you see here, we are just pressing the button when page loads. The UI is unresponsive. Why? Because sometimes we have some long execution tasks, or we have some third-party or not prioritized resources loading, or we are waiting for a network call to get our UI responsive, meaning that you are kind of failing for the user, because if you are waiting for a network call to build something, you should have some more creative ways of make the user wait without say, okay, press the button. And that are avoiding long tasks, offload the main thread with web workers. That's an old-fashioned thing, but it's a very effective one. We can avoid large JavaScript bundles. That it's also common. And for the long tasks, when you go to Chrome DevTools, Open DevTools, when you see anything running with that red marks, you are running long tasks. Likely everything after 50 milliseconds are considered long tasks. What we can do, or what we should do with long tasks. Okay, let's go and see what we are doing on that script. We should break apart the functionality probably and spread or lazy load or going to a web worker to execute and non-blocking the main thread. This one, it's just a small red, but I already seen long tails of blocking JavaScript. But this, you go there, you analyze your script, you split your code, your long-running tasks in small pieces and make it asynchronous. Other cool thing that it's kind of obvious, but we don't use passive event listeners. When you are listening some scroll, okay, now you have resize observer, interception observer that are very performance. But imagine you need to add event listeners for scrolling. You likely not or never do a prevent default there, because if you prevent default there, you are screwed. Well, you can have a passive event listener. Means that the browser itself will perform the listening of this event in a more friendly and performant way. meaning that he will not expect that you prevent that event, meaning that you gain on performance. And the another thing that I see that is very common on almost every code I saw is removing event listeners. Sometimes people don't know where or when they need to remove, and they just attach them and leave them on the ocean. And you can do just the once, and you attach the event listener and you listen the event you need to listen if it's just one, and you can detach, he will be removed automatically. This is so cool when you have some life cycle on your web component, as an example, and you can just add this event listener on the connect, because you need to listen only that event, and the next time the component loads, he will attach the event listener and will remove the event again. And you don't need to just know when I need to remove in each life cycle, so on, so on, so on. It's a very cool performance hint. And web workers. Well, web workers are available even on Internet Explorer 11, I think, because it's a long and old thing. But it's being very, very, very fashioning last 2 years, because people start saying, okay, we can do this. And it's sending all the hard and heavy tasks to the different threads, yeah? Meaning that if you have a long task or something that is likely to block the main thread, you can send to a web worker, a web worker. The execution of web worker will execute in a different thread, and when he finishes the execution, he will send back in a post message the result of that execution, and your main thread is unblocked. You have few libraries that can help you with that: Comlink, Workway, and Workerize. This is so cool, and we should use it more, but it's a little bit unpopular, this use. One of the gaps that we noticed since then is because we cannot manipulate the DOM. Guys from AMP are doing something called worker DOM that probably will solve this issue soon. Here you have an example of Comlink that also some guys from Google did. And it's an example in how you can use React and use Redux, and use Redux out of the main thread. Okay. Please just check at the end the slides, the libraries, the integrations that you already have with Webpack as well, that can automatically run some parts of your code, or you can easily run some parts of your code off the main thread for free. The last part on how to improve first input delay, it's before the input comes. It's in your build process. You can use Lighthouse for that. You can use Lighthouse and all the CI budgets that you can implement on the Lighthouse running on your continuous integration server to put some budgets to accurately measure when you should go to production or not. And that way you can control your workflow and how is your progression a long time. Use Lighthouse as your gatekeeper for production. Imagine your scoring is below 80, don't pass production. Something went wrong. Or if someone's introduced a commit that your threshold of size for JavaScript, it's passed, don't go to production. Here you can use a gatekeeper, them as a gatekeeper for production. Cumulative layout shift, and last one, it's about visual stability, yeah? And visual stability is important because when we start loading a page, we want to press that button and just went away. This is not cool. New York Times did a great job on the website, and this is a casual situation that I catch on them, and I will explain soon. Well, the causes for cumulative layout shift normally are images without dimensions, dynamic injection of content, updating the DOM based on network requests, like I was saying before, and ads or embedded iframes, meaning that you should have like a schema and how the dimensions of your website will work. Because if you don't have it, they will just mess around until the browser is idle. and the visual stability it's okay. Here you have these numbers, and it's calculated based. It's a multiplication between the impact fraction. The impact fraction is the measurement and how much space an unstable element takes, meaning that that div that is unstable, the impact fraction is the impact fraction, and the rest we have the distance fraction is the how much he moved away from the original position, meaning that you can calculate that by multiplying them and you have a number. And if the number is superior to 0.25, you are in poor situation. If 0.1, you are below 0.1, you are okay. Here on, I just found, it's not a bug. They only have good and bad, yeah. On Web Vitals extension. I this morning I was trying to raise a pull request, but I didn't have time to finish to have also the allo ratio. Well, this is also something that we can fix easily, yeah, by reserving some space for the potential content using skeletons. Some people will think, okay, this is old-fashioned. It's Facebook Live 4 years ago or 3 years ago. Avoid fault and void that I will explain. And here, the same site running with a reduced layout shift, almost zero, because they already reserve a slot for content. But happened that the content I saw wasn't the correct size. Here you see the page almost didn't shift because they expect 400 pixels height, and the banner they use has like 380. It's a small amount of shaking, let's say like that. And in the page I show at the beginning, the banner is very small, meaning that the movement is bigger. How you can prevent this and how you can use this well? Well, in Chrome you have the layout shift regions where you can see in development where the things are going, meaning that if you have this on your browser, you can refresh your page and see in purple or blue the things that where they are moving. And this is very useful because sometimes locally, because of the cache or because we are running on local host, we don't see these movements. But of course, final users see, and it's a little bit annoying. Use skeletons. It could be old-fashioned, but this also distracts the user, and user will expect that likely something happened on that places. And the last but not least is about the void and fault. Fault is flash of uninstalled text, and void is flash of invisible text. Here is a combination of things we can do to avoid that. Well, we have the font display. We have two different techniques. The optional one that what it does is render the font that exists. If exists the font face that we want, it will render that font. If doesn't exist, render the font that exists. And we have the fallback that is similar from the previous one because the text will render. And at the end, we'll do also like the swap technique. We'll just go to the text that renders. Here, the combination of the optional font display in the preload can likely load your font and present your correct font faster. Because if you are giving high priority loading your font and using the techniques that we already spoke, when your font needs to be rendered in reality, you likely have the font there. Or if not, you are caching that font, and in the next load of your page, you will have the font for available, meaning that it's a win-win. You have a 50% or even a small percentage that you are not loading the body font or the main font correctly, but also you are doing a huge improvement on performance. Well, these are all about the Web Vitals, Web Core Vitals, how they can impact on our work. And here we are wrapping up, conclusion, summing up all what we have. And at the end, Web Vitals are a cool and good thing that Google gave to us, because we will use these thresholds and metrics to improve our experience, together with the techniques we spoke today. And for me, it's a matter of measuring speed based on tools, the tools that we spoke, for a better experience, focus on metrics. Yeah, this is for me my personal perspective of how Web Vitals are important, and Core Vitals as well. Well, the hashtag, for those that want to share how they saw this presentation, and any question or spreading the word for the Web Vitals. And my say is always create progressive web experience, create the best for your users. And last, I want to say thank you for these guys, Adios Mani, Hussein, that are doing a great job on the web. And you can see lots of links on web dev, and also 3perf that are for my friend Ivan. And yes, it's all from my side. Thank you. I think I didn't pass the time, or I passed. Okay, let's go to questions. I will stop sharing my screen, and I will jump to if someone has any question. Okay, we have lots of questions here. I will start for the first one. The Page Speed Insights is a reliable tool to measure page speed on smartphone, since the emulation can be done through the web browser on PC. Well, here this Page Speed Insights, if you go to the page, they now have two different kinds of measurement. They have the mobile one and the desktop one, meaning that you can have likely reliable measurement. But don't forget that it's a lab tool. Depends on where you are performing the measurement. In that case, if you go Page Speed Insights are from Google servers. I'm not aware that are you using mobile phones for measuring that, but they calculate based on percentile, that from all the information they have from all the other data, meaning that you kind of have a likely good measure for reference. But of course, you should also test on real devices, because they use also, I think, the Moto G4 when you are emulating. They are using that one. I'm not sure in all the specifications and how powerful is how they run, but yeah, it's likely a good measure, and you can consider it as a good one. But of course, just test in your devices, in the devices that probably your users will likely see. I guess that it's my answer for that one. Well, there is any recommended documentation or book related to improving the performance on the web? There are a lot of tools, and I would like to know where to start. Well, one of the places or best places to start on the performance is also the web dev website, because they already have some, let's say, digested articles and digested information, meaning that you don't need to go through the desert or ocean learning things. They already have some reference there, and I think for start it's enough. Of course, there are plenty of books. You can go O'Reilly, you can go other editors, and about the web performance. Myself, I go also lots of documentation and commits on open source projects in Chromium itself, because I have that interest, personal interest. But if you just want to be aware of the latest thing, already kind of digested, because they already worked behind the scenes to provide you the better content, go to web.dev, and you are safe enough to do it. Okay. Next one, do you recommend to use AMP on websites? I recommend use AMP on websites. Also, I had another talk about progressive web applications that I recommend using progressive web applications and AMP together. AMP to quickly load everything, and already you can use AMP with service workers. There is a component for that, and you can start preloading, prefetching your main website, meaning that AMP for immediate loading and your web page or website, not in AMP, sorry, for your content. But it depends a lot of what kind of website that you have. But yeah, AMP for me it's a amazing thing because grants instant load, great performance on your web, meaning that you can mix it, or depending of your content, you can just use it as a standalone. I think that Alibaba or any other popular store was using AMP to all their pages, meaning that they serve all AMP pages from the users, and after they serve their content. Well, next one, how compression works on a site. What you need to know. Okay, probably I forgot something that is very important about compression, because normally we should compress only text, not images, because images will be likely compressed or optimized. The compression works more efficiently on text, JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. How it works on your server, you have Apache or you have Nginx. They have it's like a module the server has. What he does is go when he going to serve that file. He will compress that file like in some bootload or some blow, and will transfer over the wire. The browser itself has understand how the file was compressed and can deflate that same that file, meaning that you can compress you compress on the server side when you are serving the file. Your Apache or Nginx compress that file using Brotli or gzip, and when you are on the browser, the file already transferred with likely 1/3 of the size. The browser knows that it's a compressed file and deflate that file automatically and show you the file. It's how compression works through the web. Next one, which tools or frameworks do you think that are indispensable at 2020? Don't guarantee the performance. Which tools or... Well, the tools I like to develop my web and my projects are I use for my guidance regarding performance are the 6 ones. Yeah, Chrome DevTools is my main one, Lighthouse the second one, and of course debugging. About frameworks, I don't like to talk much about frameworks because I think the web landscape it's so different and so and so they have their own characteristics that I like to use to see it as a project basis. I like a lot web components. I'm addicted to web components, but I like React. I like Vue. I like Angular. I like Preact a lot. And you should use the one that fits for you, the one that fits for your team, the one that you will have more performance, not about the framework, but performance on your team, because all these new frameworks and all these new web developments are performance focused, because the market is so wild now that if you don't have a performance framework, you are out of the framework market. Next one, when do I need to start be worried about Web Vitals? Right at the beginning of a development of a website, at the end, or during the development? Well, you should be worried about performance in all life cycle of the development. It's like the test. Everybody says, oh, we do test-driven development, but we write the test at the end. No, we should care on the 0 minute or minute 0 or the 0 second that you generate your project. You should start applying budgets You don't need to just check. You can passively check, because if you have an open source project on GitHub, you already have actions connected to Lighthouse metrics, I think, and you can automatically and passively use Web Vitals and all these metrics without having to open the browser. I do it when I'm developing because I like it, but you can use different strategies. Don't be reactive. Do the things beforehand, and you will success for sure, because you never worry about performance, because part of your development is performance too. Meaning that minute zero, start with Web Vitals and automate everything. Last one, with Bootstrap, should I go to every CSS element and remove what I don't need, or minify CSS version is okay to be used as a whole? Well, this it depends of each project. Yeah, if you are using example micro frontends and you have a container that loads all the CSS for Bootstrap for all the micro frontends, probably you should load the minified version. But you can use different strategies to have a performance load. You can even include Bootstrap and use Webpack, one of the tools I told you, and he automatically wipe or swipe a little bit of the CSS and just put the one that you need. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Bootstrap now, because we have so many good alternatives. But also Bootstrap, the next version also will. I already was seeing it, and it looks great and looks more modern and more adapted to the modern needs. And because I believe a lot on component architectures and in a componentized and modularized CSS, and Bootstrap so far was the opposite of that at the beginning, but now it's completely different, and you can optimize and you can use it. Well, looks like it's the last question. Yeah.
So, Romulo, thank you for your presentation. That was wonderful and very clarified, very understandable about the Web Vitals. So, thank you a lot. And just to wrap up the events, we may have this form there you can fill and give your feedback about this event. And after we receive your feedback, you can win an open badge to add to your portfolio. And also, just to present the next tech session with Alexi Rizzolo will be the speaker, and will present with us overview around the data studio for GDG events. The session is scheduled for August 19th, but stay tuned to our social networks for more information. Don't forget that your community can also propose a tech session, and just fill this form and we will contact you to get all the things ready. So follow us on the social media to get updated on the last news. Just want to thank all the team that make this initiative possible, mainly to our speaker, Romulo Cintra. Thank you a lot. And also Juan Fuentes by presenting the GDG Barcelona to us. So thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoyed a lot and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.